in this first session, you will be, I will be moving, and you will stay here, but you will deal with 3 different topics, which we will discuss. And then the facilitator, being me, I deal with the same topic each time. So I will move then to the next group, to the next group, and then we do a wrap-up of all the remarks and examples and from all 3 groups. So that's how it works. And you guys deal with 3 different topics. So the first topic for today are the best practice examples of developing and delivering agriculture course in direct response to industry demands. So merely giving examples. So within your experience, within your environment, what has worked, what did not work, where are the needs, what needs to be done. So that's one thing, that's the major thing we need to sum up. And then there are 3 smaller parts: establishing industry contacts, how we can do that in the future, how is it being done, getting an insight into industry demands, how is that being done, how should it be done in the future, and then how do we get the direct involvement of the industry in teaching. So can be already implemented in those examples. We'll see how this discussion works. Okay, so does anybody of you have a nice example thinking about how they introduce the industry demands in the courses that are given, or can be in small courses, short-term courses, can be in long-term? I'm just looking at you, just to give it a start. So going regarding industry demands, how do you implement that one in the courses that are given at your institution?
Okay, somebody said that the industry is changing very fast. So theoretically, sometimes we cannot update, and then it's also very, the requirement from the industry is also very practical. And then the students, after graduate, they have to meet the requirement of the industry. So that's why we have to adapt to that way. So in our case, in our college school, that we set up we just adjust the curriculum. Adjust the curriculum to send the students to go to the fields, to the big farms, to the shrimp farm or to the fish farms in the hatchery or in the grow out farms, so they can have a practice for a cycle like 3 to 4 months. So they really expose themselves to the practical conditions or situation, and this is the way that they can have experience. They learn a lot of experience. They can connect or link between theory and practice, and this is also good opportunity for the students after they graduate. They can straight away employed by the industry, or they can be more confident to go to the field. That in one thing. The second one is we also organize seminars, and then we invite the people from industry, so either alumni or the companies, so they come to give a seminar on either the skills, what they expect the skills from the student when they graduate, when they work for them. Sometimes they do not need so much knowledge, theory. They just need the skills, so the student can easily adapt immediately to the real situation, and they can give all the aspect that the skill needed, or they give the experiences they got from the real situation. So they share with the students, so the student can imagine, yeah, because they just learn only the theory, so now they can link what happening when fish are will have disease and how to treat the disease and etc. So that's why we can link the student with industry, and also the student can learn a lot of the experiences.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think.
Very good.
Can I ask what type of jobs your students typically get when they graduate?
Now either they can be a technician, engineer to take care of a farm, technically, yeah, or they work for the companies where they are selling products, many of them. But the company they need many skill, but also the knowledge, because when they go to the farmers, introduce the the products, they also able to explain something about the techniques, and also working in the governmental organization, yeah, in the Department of Fishery or Agriculture and Rural Development.
I'm asking this specifically because if we talk about what an industry needs, I think in the Netherlands, if we train a master's student, we don't train the student to become or to work in the farm or to manage the farm. We train the students to maybe become the manager of the farm or work at a very high integration level, which means we give them different skills. So I'm wondering whether when we discuss the skills needed by industry, whether that would be different in Asia from Europe.
I mean, this is the bachelor degree, bachelor
That's
level.
bachelor
I'm
degree.
talking is
Okay.
bachelor level, not master level.
Okay, good. That's maybe different than in the Netherlands. That basically all our students take a master degree.
So what I have taught is for
Okay.
bachelor.
And where in the Netherlands do you get then the training on more vocational level, like?
We
to
would
run a
have
farm
like
and-
also a polytechnic level type of training. So you would not go to university. You would go to one step lower qualification, which is much more geared to hands-on work. So it would not be university.
So only aquaculture, no bachelor degree or all fields?
You can stop at bachelor degree, but in the Netherlands still most people, 95% probably, goes on to a master degree.
And where they get the bachelor degree?
At the same university often. You can switch, but most often you just continue in the same university with a master.
When you say that they do a master degree, they have done before a bachelor degree, and the bachelor degree must be in which area? Animal production, biology.
Yeah, let's say biology, animal production, that area.
Mainly animal production.
Yeah.
I wonder, like when you said that in Netherlands, like most of your skilled manager has a master's. I just wonder what the wages set, for the skill of, like I would say, like the professional manager, because the reality in Asian country is a bit different. Because the industry can't provide them with higher wages, whereas in developed country you can pay more. That's why they can go for masters. They can manage a high-tech, farm equipped with technology and digitalize and things. With Asian country, like I'm referring to Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, most of the farmers are small-scale farmers, and even that they export produce often via one middle person or middle company that collected the produce from small scales, or they have contract farmers that deal with it. And often the small scale farmers, they don't really have big capital to pay certain wages for the graduates. So I mean, like as I said, like my experience with university is still very new, but the problem that I see, most of the undergraduate will graduated from aquaculture industry will choose to be in the government sector or probably in the what we call business, selling products, things like that. Only a small portion of them are able to go to the industry. However, that reality of the aquaculture not that even big. The one that we have, the food producer, especially the aquaculture nutrition, we have Cargill. That's one that's very prominent. The rest are small-scale farmers, like small or medium industries. Even so, those industries, they don't really offer position for postgraduates. The one that has masters. It's just come back to the wages. They have, but very limited number. So that's the issue that I see in Malaysia per se. And also the second thing is because of the industry are so limited with the capacity for capital, they are unable to equip with high technology and things like that, or even to meet certain requirement to produce the product for EU standards. In order to export to EU country, they have to fulfill all the standard and they have to have the certification. To get that certification, they have to pay certain amount of money, which comply with all the procedures, the technique, and everything. So for these farmers to hire the graduates or from the university, very unlikely, unless if the person, the graduate themselves, has certain share in the company and they will try to improve the situation. So that's the thing I try to understand on what's the situation in Europe that can be adopted in Malaysia. Nowadays in Malaysia, the university try to have approach. The practical intern has already been done for years, I think more than 20 years. But the thing's changing now is they try to introduce 3 years in the university and 1 year in the industry. But that's still experimental because, as I said, the aquaculture industry in Malaysia is still very small and not a very big company really like to offer a position. And for small-scale farmers, they are very skeptic to pay that much money for the graduates.
If I can add on that point regarding Malaysia as well, thing is when going back to the graduates that we are producing, we want to produce when we produce the aquaculture graduates at degree level or even at master level, you are producing graduates that hopefully that not only know how to do it but why we do it. I think that set them apart from the just general workers. But the thing is, the reality in aquaculture industry in Malaysia is there's a competition between the general workers and the aquaculture graduates, because the general workers you can get it from other countries at a very cheap rate, and we don't have a minimum wages like other countries in established countries. So we can get any foreign workers work at a very cheap rate, and we just give them instruction. Okay, change the water, feed the fish, and things like that. While the graduates that we are producing, we know why we change the water. We know how much we need to be fed. But I don't think the small-scale farmers see the importance of having people that know how, not only know how but know why. They are sufficient for them to have someone that can do the job for them. So that's where the problem with the aquaculture graduates, where they want to fit in. Once, of course, the wages is not that high because they already have to compete with the foreign workers. And the second thing is not so much place for them because of the small scale of the industry. To add on Khalida's point just now.
Yeah, so that's the thing. When we are to see the best practice here, apart from learning what's the best to bring in, I also like to know how actually in Vietnam you try to cater with the industry, how the development from the small scale up to the bigger scale to produce product for exports, and also how they EU standard, if if we're going to produce the graduates in aquaculture, it will change the whole scenario of the industry, including the farmers. So that's the thing, a bit conflicting with us. We are here try to make a difference in aquaculture industry and aquaculture graduates, but the industry itself, what I'm saying is in Southeast Asia, like there are so many restrictions in there. Like Indonesia, I can tell about Indonesia and Malaysia because we're a neighboring country. It comes to the very basic of, I said, like producing seeds. Like Vietnam already established producing seeds for the Pangasius, probably Norway with the salmon, like everything in already close to circle. You can tell, but in Indonesia and Malaysia, garupa, for instance, that they still collected from wild. They export it to other countries. They call it from Indonesia, from Malaysia, but it's unsustainable system because they're still collecting from wild, not completed the whole circles. So let's say if I want to, if we are trying here producing graduates to work in the system, yes, we can say them like theoretically at the university, but once they're out there, they don't have place to go because the setup isn't there in Malaysia and Indonesia because the competition between the small-scale farmers and the bigger company. At the moment, I can tell only one company in Langkawi Island. That's from actually Norway. Like the company that been set up there with highly equipped, and hiring high-skilled, graduates to work with them. So that's opened a big opportunity, but the rest of it is still challenging. That's from my perspective. Like if we want to produce graduates for the working in marketing, in government, yes, there are plenty. But to have the skill and different sector of experts in aquaculture in Malaysia, I can say it's still challenging. But that's my thoughts.
So from what I understand, the difference in Asia and Europe is not that big concerning general workers and graduates. So small companies, small fish farms, or fish farmers, they prefer a general worker than a graduate because the general worker will do what they need, and they are not aware how much important is the graduate. However, now this is a question also. The graduates, do they know how to do the general work? Do they know or do they want to go fishing, feed, do the basic things, or do they put themselves in a position, it's not for me?
Well, that's the issue, because we have that issue in Malaysia, because the generation, you come back to the generation nowadays, if the salary isn't really meet their demands, they refuse to work. And they're not, I would say, there are people still working with a small scale because that's their passion. But the challenges is, they choose not to because of the general worker, the salary is way lower than the graduates. So it is a huge challenges over there.
So if I recall it right, please correct me if I'm not. In Malaysia and apparently also a little bit on Vietnam, you have a lot of high-scale, high-level graduates and a little bit of work for them. And then the other way around, the vocational trained workers, there are almost none, and you need a lot. Okay, let's start with this problem then. For Asia. No, let's first see. This is for Asia. Let's first see that. How is it in Europe? Is it the same problem? Is it different?
So I think in the Netherlands we don't train at least master students not to work on a fish site. So where a company then says you are not capable of working on a fish site, no, that is correct because we don't train people to work on a fish site. Sometimes they do, and then they're not properly trained because that's not the purpose. So I would say we train them to think almost about the aquaculture system of the future. So to take a step further and say what we do now is not sustainable, think about how it should be sustainable in the future, that type of thinking. So to be honest, we don't train them to industrial needs.
Okay, where do industrial companies get then their
not from
stuff?
the university, but from polytechnic level or lower training level.
So, but you do have it in the Netherlands.
Yeah, so we do have
And
those
do
a bit
you-
less focused on aquaculture because aquaculture in the Netherlands is small. So you would typically not have a large population of people being trained to work on the farm because there would be no job.
So there's little amount of jobs.
So if you, yeah.
So the
industry.
demand there is
So
an imbalance.
So
On vocational level.
the industrial demand in the Netherlands is low because there's not much aquaculture, so there would not be a high demand. So typically our students would be going around the world working in a different situation. So it's different. But I imagine in Sweden must be similar.
Don't have a lot of experience in Sweden, but if I have to say more, I think we can say more from the side of Belgium, I would say. I can say both sides. I think in Belgium what we have seen, I think Mieke can also help me with this. We have been training more from the angle of R&D, more from the side of R&D, because that's what we have in Belgium, so many companies. So yeah, an R&D manager, a scientific staff, or some on that angle, because it is somewhere that we have the companies around R&Ds and all. But we have also seen recently now that there are small-scale farming activities coming up in Flanders or in Belgium. We are also training all those people, and they are setting up farms. They are doing all these small-scale activities there. But at least to my knowledge, and that includes me as well, that we have been trained to be an R&D manager for scientific staff.
Maybe it's interesting to hear Norwegian.
As I said, I don't know the aquaculture industry that much, but I at least in the food science sector, it's comparable, I think, because like on the bachelor level, we have quite a lot of bachelor students at food technology, and we also have these internships in the industry, and we're also sometimes discussing a lot with the students. Should I do this? I'm a student. I should not do this. Is the work for this is for the workers, right? But our experience with kind of internships is that they get a lot of knowledge, even though it's quite basic, but that they can use when they're finished their studies, but they are supposed to be the leaders of these people. So they get the kind of, we have good experience with those kinds of internships. Of course, when we have these internships, some of them are quite, it's not that basic though, so, but they will also report to the university every month, and so we are keeping so we're discussing, so they understand what they're actually doing and why they are doing it, right? So, so we have a lot of bachelor students all graduating also.
I wonder if, like, sorry.
No.
If suddenly I think about because the practical part, the internship part, what's the policy like in Sweden, for instance, like if there are students from other part of the world, for instance, like from Malaysia that would like to go there, or in Netherlands to learn, like because we have like 3 months of internship to go there. What's the procedures apart from is it like contact the university straight away, or because I think in my perspective, because that's what I did with Thailand at the moment. Like we received 2 students from Thailand university to come over here, and to Malaysia and in my laboratory to exchange, so that we learn the technique from Thailand, and Thailand learned some of the facilities and techniques from us. So can I do the same with Sweden and Netherlands or somewhere, or Portugal, for instance?
Well, the situation in Portugal, we have most of the farms are small scale, small. So it's a family that runs the fish farm. And there's a lot of them. There's a few large scale. So the small scale, they don't have enough work or income enough to pay a graduate. Then a large scale, and then still a small scale farm would like to have someone that would do the work as a general worker. So in this case, either the graduate goes back and does all kind of work and then is appreciated, or if he stays, at a high level is not going to be appreciated, and the owner doesn't need it anymore. There's another problem about getting easily a job, is that, for instance, the feed industry, to make sure that they get clients, many times they offer a veterinarian service. Like they have a veterinarian that can be responsible, but then it's kind of for free. It's included. If they buy that feed, then it's for free, the service. So then many veterinarians are not needed because someone or a company is providing that work or that service. Sorry?
Veterinary service is done by veterinarians or by
Well,
non-veterinarians?
Well, just imagine a big industry that produces feed, and if the fish farmer buys them the feed, they provide them, they give a veterinary service or someone that is responsible
By a veterinarian.
by a veterinarian, but it's very far away. It's not
That's
present.
the side way. Okay, we need to end up. Yes, please.
Can I just clarify? In our situation, Vietnam, especially in the Mekong Delta, where aquaculture is very developed and very big demands of bachelor degree, the graduates. No, the small scale. Small scale farmer they do themselves. Just the large scale, big company they enroll a lot of students, graduate students, and of course. We just had a meeting, discussion with the stakeholders, including companies, and they said maybe the students they do not have like a right motivation because now because the high standard living standard already high in Vietnam, so a lot of students they are not poor anymore. Their family can afford themselves, and then sometimes they don't have a motivation to study, just go to, and then of course when they go to the field and they are offered a job in a big company, but it's a distant area, and then they come, so solitary, so lonely, and then they escape, and the industry they said that now you should also how to train how the student aware of the working conditions in the company, in the social, and the other thing is so I mean small scale farmers they don't need labor, they do it by themselves, just the large scale farmers or companies. And for the master level, so I think before the industry they do not need much master level. They don't need, because if they employ the master graduate, they have to pay higher salary, and it's not necessary for them to pay such a high salary. And the master student after graduate they work in the government organization, or in the big company where they have an R&D. They have an R&D section, so they work there, not in the field. So now the problem is the master candidates decreasing and decreasing. Before the government, they encourage their staff to study at higher level, but now no more.
No more. They don't encourage anymore.
They don't encourage. They don't. No, not the obligation. Before it's a obligation. They have to study higher level, but now it's not obligation. If the staff they wish to have a high level, they allow them to go to the university to get a master degree, but they do not offer, they do not support financially support, and also the time. So the staff, they have to manage themselves to follow the master program. So that the reason now the master candidates now decreasing in our country.
Okay. In 1 minute, can I say something really fast?
Yes.
Because I think we don't have much time.
No, and we don't have a lot of points yet. I'm getting the good picture. So, okay, knowing all this, I think Asia is very interesting. What's happening there? Same of Europe. Yeah? So if we wrap up, we have one side in Asia. The biggest problem is that the small-scale farms that would be in favor, that would need new insights in aquaculture, to be innovative insights, to be able to grow and to become larger. They have not the money to pay for the workers, or they did not get the chance to do it themselves. Because in Vietnam, it is like what was where I'm trying to get the picture, where you say that there is no demand because they do it themselves.
Yeah.
Huh? So, but I presume that even those people, the small-scale farmers that don't have to have other workers to help them, they need to be educated as well. What's the best practice example there? How can we deal maybe with this problem? Can we for 5 minutes focus on that one? How we can try to find ways, or that you already know about, on how to improve the knowledge of the existing small-scale farmers?
I have a suggestion on that. Seems to be like the money is the seems to be the problem here in many countries. At the in capital, or in paying salary. I'm not sure if this is being done. I heard it's being done, but I couldn't pinpoint how many percentage, which company. It's just something that I heard before. Similar approach that people do with people who do sales, who teach things, who sell things. If they do more sales, they will get more bonuses or incentive. And I heard that similar things can be done in aquaculture setup. If we can make the industry to make the package more interesting. Say if you can produce a certain amount of ton of shrimp or certain amount of this, working really hard to produce that kind of amount, maybe certain incentive can be add on top of the basic salary. Okay, say the basic salary is low because the company cannot pay much, but when they can, when the culture reach the market, they will get some roll of money back. So can it be given back to the workers as an incentive? It don't have to be much, That is the point of business. You're making money out of it. So if you make money and you give back, then you don't make money. And aquaculture is about making money at the end. So if that kind of approach can be embedded in the industry setup, and also to be known by the students, I think the graduates will be willing to go back to the industry, work with a basic salary, with something to aim at the end. And that will be a good motivation. If money is really a problem, then that would be a good motivation for everybody. Good motivation for the workers, good motivation for the farmers as well.
Can I say quickly something on that? Sorry about that. Well, that's the opinion of that. But for me, I deal with the small farmers. We organize a short period of workshop. We gather the local farmers, like in the certain area, come together, and then during that short courses, we invite all the expertise from, like the experts from fisheries department, from the university, and then just like the workshop that we have here, just a few days. So we educate the farmers that don't have the background of the aquaculture, but we tell them what the best practice for the aquaculture and to improve the aquaculture industry. And mostly it's been done free of charge. They probably just pay minimal wages, like minimal fee for like food and things like that. But most mostly been done by grant. Like I have the grant and I did that to the farmers. And actually, with the community that I'm working with at the moment, they're very supportive to have sustainable environment for the produce, because they understand that the shore, the river, and the estuaries is very important for the culture system. So I think that if I made that's how I work with the farmers. They don't have a degree, they don't have aquaculture background, but they are running the business and they have more experience hands-on. It's just like how to refine the industry into more sustainable industry. That's what we did. It's short-term courses.
Like a knowledge transfer sort of thing?
No, it is short-term workshop, like a week or so. Like knowledge transfer. It's more like you go to personal.
Technique,
This is like we gathered all the community and we share the knowledge with them, and also we visit them, and for like the farms that I'm working with now. So I understand what's the situation, and I try to tap into the system, and then because they have graduates working with them, but run by different people, so we work with them.
What I like about the second initiative is that you have a grip on it yourself, because you can take the initiative and invite people, whereas the first initiative you proposed, you have to convince industry of a model, which is much more difficult.
It's true.
Because you have no control yourself.
Change the setup, the mind setup is very different. True.
Can I say something? I think that a big problem is the small scale. Because small scale, we can say, okay, they don't produce much, and good practices are not supervised so well as a big fish farm. The big fish farm, there's graduates, there's probably more inspections, and the best practices are probably guaranteed. In small scale, we can say, okay, they don't produce much, but the problem is that 100 small scale can produce more than a big fish farm. And the impacts on the nature, on the environment, and the diseases or the use of antibiotics, that it's not well done, it can have a really bad impact. So a small scale doesn't mean that it's small. If we multiply 100, and I have pictures from Along Bay, where there's a huge number of small-scale producers. So maybe the law. Well, you said that there's courses you can teach the small scale, but the thing is that do they really learn? Or do they really apply what they learned? Concerning treatments and so on, or should the law oblige them, or groups of small farms, small fish farmers, like 10, okay, you are 5, you must have a graduate, or you are 3, you must have a graduate, because do you understand what I say? A small little one, okay, is not important, but 100, yes, it's important. So maybe
someone to oversee
in our
the
case,
operations.
in our case, we have 3 channels to link with the small scale farmers. First one, directly. So if we have some projects focusing on enhancing the capacity of the small scale farmers, so we organize the training directly to the small scale farmers in specific area. And the second channel is through the extension.
Do the first one, because since you said me something.
Okay, the first channel is we in the university. We directly train the small scale farmer based on projects. Secondly, through the extension centers, as the Dr. Din already mentioned. Through the extension, we have an extension centers system from central to local, and then this is the governmental officer, and they direct train the farmers regularly. Of course, through us, sometimes they are retrained, refreshed by us in a particular area for them, so they can transfer the knowledge and train the farmers. The third channel is also through the industry. Many companies, many business business company, they are selling products, so they also ask us to help them to organize workshop in a, like for 100 farmers in each area, focusing on, of course, using their product, but in general we also offer them the techniques how to manage the ponds and treatment, give a treatment when the shrimp or the fish have disease or something like that, and then we involve in that workshop also the way to transfer or to train the small scale farmers.
Okay. We have to wrap up.
Yep.
So I think for this group we merely dealt with the small scale farmers in Southeast Asia. Yeah, it's a small amount of time. Since apparently there is the big need there, and this is the big encompass. How do you say that in the
Gap.
in the gap?
Yeah.
Yes, the big gap. Thank you. So then I wrote down 3 potential best practices. So I noted down 3 of them, together with the things that you started with. Ut, yeah, with come to and ut. I was always thinking to and ut. I think I have some nice examples, so thank you for that. I will build further onto it with the coming groups.
Something else came to my mind. I'll say it very fast. We are talking about graduates, and when we talk about graduates, we think about one graduate, a master course that gives one graduate, but many times we need more than one. We need one engineer, we need one veterinarian, we need maybe a biologist. And the biologist cannot be a veterinarian, and the veterinarian cannot be or cannot do the work of the engineer. And if a big scale or a big company cannot hire a vet, I'm just giving these as examples. These 3 graduates at the same time: engineer, biologist, and veterinarian. Imagine the small scale. So this is another important issue. Is graduate doesn't mean one can do everything. That's this idea of the engineer, veterinarian, biologist. And big problems can...
No,
we stay.
So Facilitator.
Talking, but I will not be. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mieke.
What happens in
Higher education, I think.
it's because-
You're trying to follow up with the lecturer.
I blame my parents. Well, you blame your parents for everything, don't you? Because everything in life is the fault of your mother and your father. And both my parents are medical doctors.
They typically have a
And we
horrible
always say,
handwriting.
yes, that the medical doctors have the worst handwriting of any discipline. So I think it's
So
genetic.
you have the wrong job. That's your conclusion.
Do you know, if it was 100 years ago when you had to do the job that sort of your father did and you were made to do what your family did, I would have been responsible for many deaths if I'd gone into the medical profession. And every single subject I enjoyed at school, history, English, philosophy, all of these things, biology, physics, chemistry, the periodic table, anything like that. So it's just as well I didn't follow the family footsteps.
But here you go, in aquaculture.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought? So, lovely as it is, just to have a little life, share my life with you. We are asked to put real-life challenges experienced by educators in trying to implement industry-responsive courses. Particular examples that you've experienced, or people who have worked in the aquaculture industry that you're aware of, that have sort of actual case studies of what we have. Without giving the game away, where the previous group I was working with got to, was they ended up, rather than individual case studies, it became a more generic conversation. And they suggested to me that there's a fundamental incompatibility between an academic world that takes time and care to maintain the integrity of research and academic excellence against an industry sector.
Just checking who are in the group.
Against an industry sector that wants an immediate fix to a problem yesterday. And that the industry wants something to a response very, very quickly, but because of the working methodology of academia, that doesn't happen. So we likened it to an unhappy marriage where both parties need each other and both parties depend on each other, but they can't actually work together, live together in a successful
so
manner.
my neighbor agrees, I think. I disagree.
Excellent. Let's all have it. That's what we need.
Can I start with that? Because as I said, I have a few encounters with that situation. I've got a call from farmers. Their produce died, massive mortality because of the infections, and they want to know the causes right away. And my colleague says, we have to do tests in order to get the results. And he came and consulted me, what's going on. I said, it come back to where they got the seeds from. And if their seeds are very far away due to the stress and it come to the new environment, it's common for the fish to die. Massive mortality within a week of the seed transfer. So it's not something unusual about it, but the farmers doesn't want to listen to that. They don't want to hear that. They just want to know, I want my seeds that I bought yesterday or day before must 100% survive in new environment. But it comes back to the knowledge. They don't have the fundamental knowledge of the new environment can kill the seeds easily, just like that. And then I asked how many percentage of mass mortality. They goes up to 50%. I said, yeah, that's normal. And the farmers doesn't want to hear that. They said, no, it can't be that. That's one thing. The second thing is for the shrimp farmers, when the post-larvae seeds comes in within a week or so, again the seeds died. And then I said, how long the post-larvae age, the age of the post-larvae to get in. They said, is it a 15 PL? I said 15 PL is not old enough to stand the challenge nowadays with the EMS. You have to get a little bit older to have the what we call immunity, because the EMS is become a spread throughout the country, Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia. So the seeds, the source of the seeds is the cause of it, and also the bad practices of doing, culture. But when you tell the farmers, actually, you suggest to them that probably they need to improve their practices. They say that that's ridiculous. We've been doing this for 20 years, nothing happened, and now this, that's what happened for the 20 years of malpractice. You will pay it today, but for those big companies, they're aware of that, because in Thailand, for instance, they understand that the practice is the one that contribute to mass mortality of the shrimp and things like that, and now they're changing to what we call more integrated farming, things like that, and they're more open to what we call fundamental and sustainability. But for small-scale farmers, if you want to train the undergraduates to work with small-scale farmers, you have to understand the situation. And also, always, it's not working parallel. It always contradict with the education system, where we try to approach holistic way, and then the industry said, no, we want to make money out of the most of our capital. If we give 1 cent in our system, we want to produce 50 cents, for instance. That's what I've been dealing with. So.
Gosh, and you needed to get that off.
Yes.
Do you feel 5 years younger now that you've said will you sleep well tonight?
Because I'm dealing with the industry, because I understand how the farmers feel, but in the same time, I want the student to also understand that the farmers working with a small capital, we can't ask more from them, because they try to make living, not they're trying to make money out of you know, like if you see, yes, we see that 1 cent want to produce 50 cents, we thought it's a lot, but for the small scale farmers, it's not. It's just like to survive their daily basis and things like that. And in my case, I teach students to understand the farmers and see how you can tap into the system. Like, you know, you can't tell the farmers, do this, do that, don't do this or don't do that. No. Listen to them, get to know what actually they've been doing, their practices, like for whatever period of time, and then ask them in which way that you can improve or help. That's the thing that I found more approachable way in our culture, rather than telling the farmers, oh, what you're doing is wrong, or try to be a teacher to them when they already done the thing for like 20 years and they have experience. It's just like, you know, it's a different approach. So to train this undergraduate student to, you know, put themselves in the farmer's shoes, that's a huge challenge, because the generation gap. These kids are more like, you, that's smart, that's dirty, I can't deal with it, but they want to do aquaculture. So that's the challenges there.
And mentioning in your culture, so is this a specific problem to Malaysia, or is your experience in Portugal or the Netherlands or elsewhere? Would you say that's the same? Are farmers as awkward and stubborn in Europe as they are in Southeast Asia?
I think everybody is stubborn. It involves money.
Yeah, and I have another, because I work with the farmers, so sometimes like, I'm in a very situation.
Maybe you shouldn't work with farmers then. Take a sabbatical.
For instance, like post-harvest process, like, you know, they need to harvest the produce from the ponds or from the cages as quickly as possible. And they already come to the certain speed, and they come to you, they just say like, okay, we want to make it quicker, from like 45 minutes, we want to make it in half an hour. Like most people think that 15 minutes is nothing, but for the farmers, 15 minutes is a lot of things, because it will affect the whole things. The reason why I said so, because of, again, this is developing country that is not well equipped with all the machine, temperature control, things like that. So that's the reason why even 15 minutes, huge things, because under the hot weather, like, you know, the tropical country, things like that, so the produce easily spoil if you didn't do it quickly and store it in ice. So that's the challenges when they come to you and then like wondering like how they can improve it, and they want the result next week, when like you think like, okay, how I'm going to do this within a week, like, yeah. So that's another thing that farmers always request, like sometimes like make you wonder like, what should I do?
Well, we've heard two examples of proposing the motion that the system's incompatible, but there was a voice that said he disagreed. So let's hear an alternative point of view.
From the previous discussion, I have the impression that we agree that it's not so much Asia versus Europe, but it's small farm versus large farm, large enterprise. Right. So I disagree in the fact that we have in the Netherlands at least more discussions with very large companies, much less with small farmers. And these large companies are even so advanced that they tell us, what you do, we can do better. Oh, wow. So give us something that we haven't thought of yet. And we will need to use 5 years from now or 10 years from now. Think ahead, because we're so big, we have our research unit, we have this and this. And we are much more focused, so we can do it faster, cheaper. We have in-house the people you have trained in the past. So we have the knowledge in-house. So the needs of such a company is completely different. But you were saying in Portugal that the small farms in Portugal have basically, you have the same conflict. So it seems to be a small farm which has a direct need versus a large farm which has to think many years ahead. They have to think about sustainability, because if they don't, then the phone rings and God phones and says, I'll correct you.
I know, and the poor man will be listening in his microphone. Yes. Suddenly there'll be a spike on the recording tape, and that happens.
So I think the big difference is between the large and the smaller companies.
Yes, it's rather, because in Asia, for instance, like CPL company and Cargill company, Cargill is a food producer.
Yes.
CPL is one of the company that produce feed, seeds, and food product. They have their own laboratory setting.
You are advertising now on the.
Sorry.
But other brands exist throughout the globe. As they always used to say on the BBC at home, other brands are available. How much... I can see how this method, thesis works for specific problems, but so if there's a disease issue or a mortality event, but taking the subject to industry responsive courses, so more educating. So for the large companies, they have to recruit their staff from somewhere. These staff presumably having been given a foundation education in aquaculture issues, so perhaps not the specialty in a company laboratory, but just taking on a good general graduate student to work in the organisation. What level of interaction is there with industry or industry coming to educators saying you're really not delivering the calibre of graduate that we're looking for? They have a very, I don't know what I never know what I'm talking about, but for example, you gave us people who had a very good level of physiology, very good knowledge of fish physiology, but they have absolutely no aptitude at problem solving in a commercial time frame. All they want is to be given more industry money to go and do a project. That sort of thing. Is there a conflict between those two?
I can give you one example. Our education program, where our university composes the master program, has a committee formed by people from government, from industry, but maybe also different stakeholders, and they would reflect back on the program regularly. Right. So they would be asked to give feedback and say, "Oh, it's very nice. You teach them in this, this, and this, but we see a need coming up for more training in these aspects." And then slowly but definitely you will try to incorporate this in the education program.
And that works well. That's an effective.
It can always be improved, and probably the response of the university, I would estimate, would be too slow. From an industry point of view, because typically you don't change education programs overnight.
Take a year or two.
I have an example as well. When students do their industrial training or attachment, right now it's around 14, maybe up to 3 months, or more than that. We have to go, the lecturers have to go to the industry and then talk to them and what's the problem, is our students doing well here and things like that. And the comments that I always get is the students can do well when you give them instructions. So if the instructions today, if you have to organize this and do this or feed the fish and things like that, they will be able to do it. But after that finish, they sort of not able to take things further from there. They work based on instruction basis. So I think that's something that the industry said to me is the ability to students to be independent and waiting for instruction. So if the instruction say works at 8, they will have to what should I do at 8? Unless you tell them beforehand, then they will do it directly. I think that is one thing that in the industry told us that we have to implement in our course of study, to make the students to be able to be independent and take things further rather than just receive A and stop at A. How to make yourself more valuable in industry setup, because I think when you start working, you have to make yourself indispensable. And how do they do that if they only work on single instructions?
Is that an industry-specific request? Because I would say that's true for any job you get after your training. You have to develop the capacity to go from A to B to C without continuous instruction. That makes somebody valuable.
That's true. The skills that everybody
and maybe that is typically something you add at the master level.
Yeah.
You just can't give
Yeah.
too much yet at a
Yeah.
bachelor level.
Because it comes with maturity as well.
Yes.
Like if they are undergraduate student, at that age, they don't reach that maturity. Those think ahead is coming with maturity. Probably you're right with masters, a certain age they come with that package. So
Yeah, certain age may play a role as well.
I think that can I say something? I think that there's a problem that has been growing and growing all over the world, and it's because of television, communication, newspapers. Is a war that has been made against aquaculture, and because of that, industry is closing doors to the exterior more and more, and because of that. They are even closing doors to the education field. It doesn't mean that they don't like the education area or the universities, but they tend to protect themselves from newspapers because they don't know if the group that is going to visit them is someone that will take a picture and will put it in television or in newspapers. At least in Europe it happens. I don't know what about Asia, but the industry has been more and more isolated to protect themselves from bad publicity and wrong publicity. I don't know what about Asia.
I think that happens everywhere. Everybody trying to protect themselves with all this global information available.
And you feel in terms of sort of course development and responsiveness to academia that the industry doesn't engage, that it sort of withdraws.
I think that if this problem didn't exist, the collaboration between university and industry would be much bigger, and courses would be easier to organize.
Right. So can you give an example of how there isn't collaborate? Give an example rather of where you would like to see collaboration that there currently isn't.
Well, to be honest, I'm not exactly the best example because I have a very good relationship with farmers. I do have. I go twice a year to the meetings. I'm not a farmer, and the Farmer Association in Portugal, they organize twice a year meetings, workshops, seminars, and I go as much as I can. So most of them, they know me, the secretary knows me, so I communicate well with them. I don't put myself as the professor or the veterinarian and like saying, what are you doing? Are you working correctly? I don't put myself, I'm humble. But I feel, and if they trust me, they open doors. And they open doors because they trust me. And they trust those that I bring with me. That's what I feel.
But that's interesting because now you say that university could therefore improve communication if they would act like you.
But I feel that it's not easy. And these has years. So I haven't been communicating with them in the last few months or the last couple of years. It has been something for a long time. But I feel that they trust me, and it's interesting that they trust me because many times I bring people, either students or even like 2 years ago, I brought to a big facility of tuna. I brought a German that studied in your institute in Wageningen. And they trust me, the administrator, the employees, so I had to go through different levels. They didn't ask me questions like saying, oh, do you trust that guy or so on. And he was taking a lot of pictures, and at the end, one asked me, why was he taking so many pictures? Then I said, oh, it's just because he's curious, his first time he's seeing these. But I felt that they were still a bit suspicious. And there's no doubt if I was industry, I would be suspicious too, to be honest.
I'm going to carry on my marriage metaphor now and say because we've got trust into the mix now, and that's a big part of it. So how can you teach trust as it were? How can you build, if that's going to be something, how can you encourage? I've got one question, and my second question, I was thinking while you were explaining that, I have my own personal experience of running a trade association. We're either about to be evacuated due to fire, or we're declaring war. It's going to be one or the other, isn't it? But we'll just talk over that and pretend it's not happening. So I have personal experience of a farming sector that was mostly small producers. So personally, I identify with that idea that they would tell me as the trusted representative of the trade body, but I then wasn't allowed to tell the government. And you're going, well, that's not much good if you've told me, but I can't tell anybody. What am I to do? You've given me the ball and then cut my hand off at the same time, so I can't do anything with it. Does that situation of trust get reflected with the larger companies as well? So it makes no difference if it's a small producers meeting in Portugal or a large intensive farm with numerous sites and numerous locations.
Both small and big ones.
It's the same,
but it's the same. It can be different in one important aspect. I don't arrive. I mean, don't feel that I'm just making theater when I talk to people. I am what I am, and I just like to see fish, and and I think it's easy to understand that I like to see water and fish, and by the way I talk, by the way the small farmers, I have to adapt my language, so I cannot. I have to adapt my language. I have to be humble and to be like them on the way I talk and my vocabulary.
In my experience, I had to swear a lot more. It was a lot more rough language. Was my experience.
Because if I arrive there.
Very academic
néolaire and with a very sophisticated language and technical language, they would probably.
Then you have the gap.
They want.
So I experienced this one. This one company that I have to visit during one of the industrial training. They have actually a 3-story building where general worker can only access the first story. And then the students that we send there can only access up until the second story. And then the third level, the only people can access is the owner and the sons.
So you were not allowed to go third?
I went there. Wow. My point is in certain the nature of that business, there's certain techniques that they have to protect before, if you allow a lot of people to go in and the technique get being distributed and other people know about it, they will lose their advantages in the market in that nature of that business. I'm not talking about food fish here. That's the most I can say.
I'm trying to work out what you are. I want to know what this company is.
So that's why they are very protective in terms of their setup, the feedings and what they do at that level. So that is something that I have to, because they told that to me. If I go to my class next week and just tell, that company do this and do that, and when you go out later you do the same, I think that will breaking the trust, and that is not a right approach when you approach the industry and you're teaching at the same time. What I can tell my student is there's different techniques that can be explored.
Well, I guess it's.
Can I ask a question? How do you reconcile that with your academic integrity? As surely when you discover a new development, there's sort of an onus to publish that and to take that forward into the public domain. Now, obviously, if you're coming in from a commercial point of view, it's in your interest to maintain competitive advantage and not share that. And there, to me, it seems there's a tension between the commercial advantage and the ethos of academia, to put in the public domain that which you learn. So is it possible to be an academic for cash in that.
Yes,
concept.
of course, there's always interest. You want to do more on that. You want to know why they do it. So it is an academic interest. But I also have to respect. You also have to respect that they've been working on that setup and that system for so long with the backup data, with their own research, and it's not fair if we go there and take that as a new knowledge and disseminate it, because for me, it is not mine. I know it, but it's not mine yet because they've done their work. It's like something one researcher hasn't published yet. We know it and we want to publish it. That is wrong. In general, yes, it is interesting academically, but I think we also have to respect the owner because they work hard on it. Yeah.
And what, in your experience, has been industry's response when you've gone to them in situations like this and said, look, you're sitting on information that would be very beneficial to the sector
world, yeah.
for you to share this information, either for good or bad. I would understand for a commercial advantage you might not want to share something, but in events of mortality, for example, let's use a negative one, saying if you shared this situation with other farms, generally speaking, the entire industry could benefit from this. Is that understood on the part of industry, or do they say, well, that's all very well, but...
I think, from my opinion, this is my personal opinion, I think if you already build a good rapport, like good relationship with them, maybe we can start with establishing a formal linkages or something that to make sure that when we say the knowledge come out, the credit goes to the company as well. I think that is important. So maybe they can, but they want something that is there, something that they studied it. So if we could do like an MOU or linkages, or when we share the knowledge or when we expand the knowledge to other people, it is known that, or because this company A has started it, and with collaboration with academia, we managed to help more people. I think to give the credit is important as well.
Maybe the company you mentioned is just special case, like a localized.
Yes.
I think most of the industry they have a very good collaboration with the academy institutions, like because they need also information and also especially the recruitment, and we can have a relationship and very good collaboration with them. For example, in my university, every 2 years we organize a conference, scientific conference. So they very collaborative to sponsor and to join the conference, and also they offer the scholarships to the students. Many companies they offer scholarships.
Do they give a presentation when you do the conference?
Some companies they have also research collaboration with us. They want to do research in some specific area to investigate something. It's also which is very benefit for them.
I'm asking because I'm running a workshop which is post-university level already for 20 years. It's on fish vaccination. And there's large industries involved and they have their secrets, but they also have a lot of knowledge. And in the past I brought them together and said, I want you to speak, but I don't want you to sell. And all 5 major players came in, and they were actually very happy to share, and they're very good in stopping where it becomes too commercial. They perfectly know themselves. But at the same time, when they have an interested audience, they will go further, I think, than initial, because they're proud. So they'll say, I'm quite proud. So they will share quite a bit of their information. And I asked them not to sell products. And because all 5 were there, they said this for them was a great experience because they knew each other very well. They're always on these stands in a competitive situation, and now they were in a non-competitive situation. Because they meet each other continuously. They're actually friends, but they're always in a wrong setting. And that created a very nice open atmosphere. So if you can manage something like that, so that's why I was asking whether they give presentations. Because they have a lot of information.
Yes, yes, yes.
But I guess it depends. Like what we say is more like aquaculture industry in producing food. That's why I understand. But another part of the aquaculture is actually ornamental fish. The ornamental industry is really reliable highly on the secrecy of producing high quality of the product. So I think in sharing the knowledge for food production, I think more of the farmers, they're
More
willing
willing
to
to
share.
share.
But in ornamental fish, well, probably we should understand as academicians, like it required effort and skill and
There are
things.
secrets. Many secrets.
Especially, like I can say to you, like a long time ago, luohan is hybrid of tilapia and the fish. The Chinese loved it because the luck sort of things like that. When everybody know how to produce it, the price of the luohan dropped. With the fighting fish, like to get a solid, pure white or half moon structure, it required time and broods and things like that. So I mean, there are certain aquaculture that they really want to keep it just for themselves, like koi or carps, or we have arapaima, arowana. So those type of things, you hardly hear the farmers share their knowledge.
But even in those cases, there's probably a lot you can share without sharing the information of the special crossbreed or something.
My experience with the food technology industry is that they also feel responsible for giving the students' experience in the industry, and also to invite students to have into their industry, because they are troubling and they have trouble to recruit good candidates. So they see that as a good opportunity to get the students interested in their sector. So we have quite a good experience with the industry in that.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I'm fascinated by the ornamental angle of it, because that's completely new to me. I know nothing about.
You won't believe what they do, what they have been doing with colors, shapes. Recently I bought these zebrafish. They are fluorescent, green, pink, but they sell it.
They glow in the dark.
It's just amazing. One important thing, if I can just
Yes,
really
yes,
fast.
yes, please.
In my courses, I invite producers, so I invite industry as much as I can, and I also visit them with students. They like to be invited. I know them already. I feel many times that they don't have time, so they are very, very busy in industry. Another important thing that can be a problem, but now I know how to deal with that, is that I cannot obviously oblige the industry to tell what I want. They will tell what they want. They will say what they want to say. And because of the studies they have, or because of misconceptions or wrong ideas, sometimes they say things that are not correct or that I disagree. What I do in these situations is that previously to the students, when the course starts, I say, I will invite people, you listen to different opinions. Some of them I don't agree, but everybody is free to say what they want. Obviously that I cannot create an argument and discussions, otherwise they wouldn't come back again. But this can create, so they have no time, many times they have no time or little time, and they might say things that I don't agree or collide with what I'm teaching. But the way I prepare things previously solves anything. So, and I don't need to clarify things with the students. And then I say, the material for the exam, it's here. So you study from here. That's the questions. And during visits, I just do questions that are obvious or that,
Some cases like the special case.
Yes, that is actually a special case.
Even we also encounter like that, like localized thinking. For example, some leaders of company, they graduated from the other university, and I don't know, for some reason they don't like
Kanto University.
Central University, for instance. So they
Very
never
strong with their alumni
collaborate.
university.
No.
Something like that.
Academic rivalry.
Like that.
surrounding the world.
And they just recruit the students from other university, and the other way around. Like some our students, they never recruit they have something like that, but not many.
There's
So
certain,
like
yeah.
in your case that you.
But is it
So
easy?
if you change, if they change the boss of that company later, you can go to the third level.
Do some of your students do a master or bachelor thesis together with the industry?
There's one
Yes.
student,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
One student that are doing. The students being sponsored, the tuition fee, the materials for the research, but there's also an agreement before that. Before that, we already have an MOA, Memorandum of Agreements, with that company of if there's something that can be patented later on, what would happen, or publications and things like that.
Yeah.
Are there courses taught in ornamental fish crossbreeding and manipulation and things, or are the people that do that, is it all
Yeah, there's a
their own
specific
family
course.
secret? So there are.
There's specific called ornamental fish culture in my university. We also have a breeding, genetic breeding subject that also touched on ornamental fish, because ornamental fish is especially very big in Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia. It's a very big industry.
The general technique is quite common, but the secret is about the brood stocks and
stock
the
and
criteria
species,
of
the
the
criteria.
phenotype, what to choose and what not to choose. So that's the one that the secrets of any company in ornamental.
And I think there's a lot of
So that's the secret.
non-scientific make-believe.
Yeah.
There is a lot of hocus pocus, which is
Yeah,
probably
sure.
not true, but they think it's true.
So they stick to that.
Yeah. So in ornamental industry is totally different than
Approach
aquaculture
than food fish,
for
yeah.
food productions. It's cost money. It's for money, economic value, but different purposes, different approach, different people, different integrity. That's what I can say.
And that's true that many times when we talk about aquaculture, people tend to think about aquaculture for consumption and not much about ornamental. And it's not only fish, there's also invertebrates, there's corals, and
For
it's so
material.
fresh water, salt water. And there's huge amount of money involved.
Yeah.
And I think, if I'm not wrong, that it's not easy to evaluate how much money is involved all over the world, because there's also many little and small producers and money under the table and things like that all over the world.
Yeah, so just from a domestic experience of my own, I was always quite surprised when I discovered that ornamental fish is a very good way of money laundering.
Oh yes.
Money laundering.
Because it's cash, and a lot of it's a cash-oriented business, and there's a lot of criminality involved in ornamental fish, which I found fascinating in my own.
You are aware that this is video
my own naive life. Well, it was somebody from the Metropolitan Police, from the London Police Force, that came to talk to us about it, explaining the criminal aspect of it, which just reassured me how naive and innocent I was, that it never occurred to me that this could be a way to become rich.
It is a very lucrative business, because if you're talking about arowana, for example, a small fish like this is about 400, 500 euro just for one fish.
Yeah. So it's per unit.
Per
So
unit.
for
That's why it's so
ornamentals,
expensive.
we don't think per kilo. But I saw, as a matter of fact, and it was in Vietnam or in Hong Kong, well, whatever. They were selling ornamentals per kilo, and it was the little goldfish to feed.
That's a totally different, yeah.
another
Those are fish.
ornamental. So
Those are the field
you have some special ornamentals
with the wrong color.
that are carnivorous.
You are
so
not
then,
good ones, so you tell
so then you buy.
It's a
Plain
cup.
God, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a
Just
very,
the cups.
Yeah, small little
cups,
carps
yeah.
It's
to
great.
feed.
Yeah.
pray for the dragon.
Yes, dragon,
Yes, and
yeah.
the temple fish.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And since
No, it's very easy to produce carps.
easily.
Yeah.
With the aquaculture nutrition for ornamental is totally different scenario than aquaculture nutrition for food production. With aquaculture nutrition for ornamental fish, you need a very small amount but high quality ingredients for pigmentation, for certain developing organ and things like that.
Size is less
Yes,
important.
in ornamental, well, I never thought we would talk about ornamental, but it's very interesting, very, very
I'm not
interesting.
sure how relevant
You
it
want-
is, but it's
you want-
fascinating. So
You want,
let's
you want,
talk about that.
you should stay at this table for next time.
We should all go
Well,
out for dinner. I think it's absolutely
But
fascinating.
it's amazing the huge quantity of small little producers that sell in internet groups, in Facebook, or small little producers that produce shrimps. Shrimps is very easy. Freshwater shrimps. It's very easy. Ornamental freshwater shrimps. It's caridina, neocaridina. You have beautiful shrimps, freshwater shrimps. They are very small.
Very
Very
shrimp. Very shrimp.
It's very easy to produce some of the species. So you have a big market of small little producers, and it's very difficult to evaluate numbers in one country or in the world concerning those numbers. Yeah. But
And also we haven't discussed about how the aquaculture for non-food productions, that there are a lot of aquaculture is meant to produce materials for fabrics and things like that.
For cosmetic,
So,
like
yeah.
the seaweed in Sabah area in Malaysia, they actually produce the seaweed for cosmetic purposes.
Right.
So from
They claim to,
laminaria.
yeah, they claim it for collagen and things like that. They claim it. So the word I use is claim.
Yeah. So seaweed, it's from the ocean. Usually it's big scale. So laminaria, namely, it's one example. You can obtain oil from laminaria, or you can do a lot of things with laminaria, for instance. But you also have another industry in freshwater. Is not seaweeds, vegetables, plants.
Cucumbers and things.
No. Cucumbers are vertebrates. Well, it's also a big industry, mainly in Asia, not much. But plants, aquatic plants.
Yeah.
Fresh water, you can produce plants in small scales, small tanks. Aquaponics. No, but just for aquariums. Plants. So it's another business or industry, and then you have this saltwater seaweed industry, plus phytoplankton and macroalgae, big one, seaweed. It's amazing.
Scenario of aquaculture industry, not just for the food, but also for other things.
Fukodan from brown algae is
And I'm a consumer of those seaweed and phytoplankton because I believe that I will live many more years. So
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm now, where were we? We were talking about real life challenges in the quarter, but how fascinating. We've more or less agreed, though, despite you saying you disagreed.
We agreed to
that,
disagree.
There is a bit of a fundamental challenge between the academic model and the industry expectation, exacerbated by size of company. If that would take the two initial divergent views that we had and put them together in some form of.
But it's a negative correlation. So when you say exacerbated by the size of the company, the smaller company makes it more difficult.
Yes, yes.
and there's one important aspect I mentioned that to Mieke at the end, is that when we think about graduates and when we think about education or university, we tend to think in just one course, one model of course, which is aquaculture, general aquaculture master degree, or undergraduate aquaculture. And aquaculture is a multidisciplinary activity. So many different graduates should be involved. So not only students from a master course on aquaculture, but also, these are few examples. Engineer, a water chemistry, a water specialist in water, engineer, I said, veterinarian. So graduates, and this is important. I never thought about, I was not thinking about this before coming here, but this is important. So we should not think about one, I don't know what your opinion is, but about one graduate from one course or one kind of course, but graduates from different courses. One engineer, because in aquaculture you have, I mean, I'm just going to summarize because we don't have time. You have tubes, you have pumps, you have, and if those pumps don't work, everything dies. If even you need to clean the pumps and the tubes often, namely from from the ocean. There's invertebrates that grow, seaweed that grow very fast, and they can block the water flow. So you need a good engineer, mainly if you have like huge facilities or big facilities, because if those machines don't work anymore, it's not the student from the master course on aquaculture that it's going to solve that.
Oh, it just
Does it make sense?
Do we produce an aquaculture graduates that know everything?
Do you understand, David?
Yes.
Yes. No. It's you've just significantly broadened the question to take it away from the industry responsive courses. There was a sort of presumption we were talking about aquaculture, and we've now trebled the workload by saying it's more than just that.
So that
So
means
there's other
the
things.
industry
It does have a
sometimes they
major
expect
impact.
more,
Yes, but
much
that's
more
very
than
relevant.
we provide.
That's a relevant point.
Yes.
I've said at our university indeed that it's time, because aquaculture has grown so big, and that's a bit what you're saying, that you can't have a training in aquaculture anymore, like you don't have a training in agriculture. No, you train yourself in animal nutrition, animal breeding, you specialize, and aquaculture has grown so big that you can't fit it into one person anymore. You need the fish biologist, this, and together you form aquaculture.
To go back to John Milton, being the last man who had
That knows all.
universal.
So now it's true for aquaculture too.
This is something we were talking about this earlier on. I remember being taught, studying English literature as a schoolboy, that there's an English poet, John Milton. He's a very famous poet in studying English literature. And he's cited as the last man in, certainly in English history, who knew everything there was to know in the late 17th century. So after that, the wealth of knowledge that became available meant you no longer read every book there was, and because you used to know a bit of everything, and now we can't even know the tiniest amount of a small specialty, because just the breadth and the depth of knowledge we have has got so great. And I often think how much simpler it must have been to be John Milton and to have read the books, which were mostly hocus pocus or religious, and that's where the wealth of most of your knowledge came from. And then the poor man read so much he went blind, but
That's nonsense.
he went blind.
Yes, I do believe that one, but not from reading too much. I don't. But we may be drifting off subject.
Well, we want to wrap up, so I think we can class dismissed. And thank you very much for your contributions. It was he went blind. It was basically rather from reading, from writing, from the strain on his eyes.
Yeah, but still, you don't get blind from strain on your eyes. Your eyes get tired, and that's it. You sleep and you're
Lack
okay.
of light, like restrictions.
Well, by his one calendar.
Well, maybe if he was reading or writing next to a gas lamp which produced something like
chemicals.
vapor or whatever,
Yes.
I can buy
That,
it.
that's very scientific point of view. You can see that the differences.
Yes. Okay, well,
The lights and the gas and the eyes and the screen.
I'd rather be romantic. Life is much better.
Sorry to spoil your.
Oh, you haven't. I'm quite happy in my romantic reverie, rather than thinking he got some infection. There's no antibiotic or something like that.
But maybe just one more thing that comes to my mind. So, the universities, education, and industry, it's a symbiosis. It must exist. They cannot be far away from each other. But sometimes the communication or the way they work might be different than regular communications or contributions or collaborations. One example is like a PhD. The industry can give the money for a PhD student, and the PhD student can be, and university can be.
But Fernand is giving us another point. So,
Okay. And the industry and the university can give the knowledge and the conditions to do a research that it's important for the industry. But in this case, maybe everything must be on a secret, so no papers can be published. Or
The agreements between the industry and the university.
Yes. So special. It's fundamental agreements between both, but sometimes it has to be a bit special.
Getting later in the afternoon, so understandable if things are flagging. Okay, so we've got this great leisure, kind of looking very much, I think, at the interactions with industry in your previous questions. So this is the question for this last session. How can aquaculture educators in Asia and Europe collaborate in the development of courses that respond to industry needs and deliver the best employees for the aquaculture global sector?
Global sector.
So in the last couple of groups we've been, with the first group I was focusing more on the value of internationalised education in general, the value to the students and the potential value to industry. Last group we were talking a little bit more about the ways in which industry can be engaged with that. And kind of coming to this group, I realise we haven't really answered in the last two groups the absolute question here, which is how can we collaborate in the development of courses?
There is something that triggers this in me, is that there's a lot of, because we've been discussing a lot large industry versus small farms, but there's a lot of large industry which is in Europe, actually operating in Asia, probably also Asia. Which means that in Europe, probably the people we train to go into the large industry, get trained in certain aspects, but then they are not being trained in how to handle the small farms in Asia, which are actually owned by the industry from Europe. So I do think there is a cross-cutting aspect that might be missed completely.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
Has anybody, I know Wageningen have been very heavily engaged, and others have as well, Cantor University, and others, Long-Ram, others have been very involved in courses that have been set up between Europe and Asia. So I guess as a kick-off, has anybody got any experience of collaborative courses that would be interesting just to consider how it's gone and what key issues were running those?
One, it's not aquaculture program, but we do have one collaborative courses. It's called Tropical Fisheries, Master in Sustainable Tropical Fisheries. It is between, it's not Europe, it's between Malaysia, Japan, Philippines, Indonesia, and Singapore. Five countries. So what they do, the collaborations start is in tropical fisheries. One of the main thing that we are lacking in Malaysia is a deep sea fishing. we don't have that. We have the industry, but not many expertise in it. Even not in university, we don't have the industrial expertise. But it is a very big industry to cater on. So what we do in this collaborative master course is group of students. These students will go to Japan to learn about this specific course. But when the students want in Japan, like the same students, want to learn about, say, biosecurity or post-harvest, they will come to Malaysia and look into the post-harvest sites because we are established on that. So maybe if we can identify the gap in educations in Asians area or the problem that you mentioned just now, and the advantages in Europe or vice versa, or the advantages in South Asia and the lack of in Euro, is something that we could do. So it can be something like a double degree program, because in the Master of Sustainable Tropical Fisheries, it's not a double degree. Each of the students will receive cert from their own university. Only for specific credit, they will go to another university, this 5 university, to learn about specific field that their own university does not offer. It's a master with linkages, they call it. Yeah, something like that.
So, how does that work in timetabling terms? Because one of the issues that we raised earlier is the fact that academic timetables in different countries can be quite different, and what is a semester in one country doesn't fit at all with the timings in another country.
So what we do is say that using the same example, the students will go to Japan, and at the same time, the time there is a summer school. Right, it's the summer in Japan where they don't have classes. So what they will do is either we go during, or they pack it in a module, sort of, in intensive module, rather than maybe 10 weeks of classes, it become packed to 3 weeks. So when they do that, the students can manage, because when in this master science, they don't use, there's not many students. At most, maybe I think at most we have at one time maybe 10 or less than that. So we managed to send them to different countries and to learn about specific module, if the module is not being offered in Malaysia, in my university. It is between these 5 countries.
How does it work if you've got some students who want to go and do that course in Japan, and you've got other students who don't, who want to do something in...
It depends on the study scheme, because in study scheme you have the core program and elective. So if core program, it's already being stated that you have to take that subject. So if you want to graduate, to have credit, then you have to follow to the country that offer it, because that's the linkages it's all about. But if it's an elective program, a subject, and the student doesn't want to go to Japan or Philippines, and they just want to take existing course in UMT, then they can do that. It depends on the study scheme.
The length of your... is the period in Japan is 6 weeks, is it?
It depends on the module. If they can pack it in 3 weeks, then it's 3 weeks. Yeah. It's going to be from the morning, in the afternoon, maybe class at night, if they want to pack it everything. So from 10 weeks lecture, it becomes 3 weeks. It's the designs, with agreements between these 2 universities. The time that they go, it's like that.
It's something our university did over the whole program. We made blocks of 8 weeks, such that people can relatively come in from easily from other countries, come in, take a course. So traditionally it would be 12 weeks, 15 weeks, and you would have several courses at the same time. You now have 2 courses. You have 6 weeks training and then exam week after. So it's quite efficient.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking, you've got 2 organisations that have got even 4-week blocks. We work in 4-week blocks, so you've got a 4-week block. If that organisation, if one organisation's 4-week block starts week 20, and the other one starts in week 22, you've still got a problem in terms of matching them.
If we don't mind, they are not joining class, then I don't think it's a problem. Say same subject A offering in Japan from January to May, and the students are going from June to August, then it can be offered if the university agree. I think at the end it's back to the university. They don't have to be in the same classes, student in Japan and student in Malaysia, although they are taking the same subject, it can be offered twice a year to cater the needs of the students.
Like
So that's why it has to be pre-agreed beforehand.
credit exchange,
Pardon?
like credit exchange, no.
It's not really graduate exchange because the student from Japan can choose not to come. It's just that to fit the study scheme, the lack of expertise in my university. So we have friends, the other university that can offer the course. But the agreement has to be done before that. So we have MOA with all these 5 universities. We already discussed what's the implications financially, time, and the staffing and things like that. It's already been pre-agreed.
Yeah. And that, those agreements all really exist on a departmental basis. Your university has an interaction with the university in Japan, for instance, because of the subject area. It's not just across the board. It's not just every subject.
It depends on the subjects that we choose. So what happened is it started with only 3 universities, and then UMT came in, and then the Philippines came in. So at the end, we have few long meetings, within these 5 universities in many countries, just to establish this happening. So after I think a year and a half or 2 years, it finally being offered 2 years ago. Or
But
a
I
year
guess
ago.
that's because of let's say the fisheries, like deep sea, because deep sea industry itself, like sharing the borders, like the source is one sea, and Philippines using it, Malaysia using it, Japanese coming in. So the source, that's the reason why they can come to one understanding, because they are collecting from one source. Like what we are talking now is the scenario in Asia. Aquaculture in Malaysia is different, in Indonesia is different, in Netherlands, in Norway is different. So like in our case here, how can in these 2 continents, like we can come and bring it together, that for instance that Europe can cater the one that we need, or what we can cater the one that Europe needs. That's what I understand here. Where that one is a bit different setting, because we are going for the one source. This is 2 different settings.
I think in terms of the Japan just now is on the technology, because we know that Japan is very established on the deep sea technology compared to us.
Yeah,
So that's why we are
using-
tapping.
yeah.
So we are tapping the expertise. So maybe if we can find the expertise in Europe and expertise in Southeast Asia, what we can tap. I think that is the potential collaboration to be think about. The details of the subject, the details of the issue or the case study is something to be discussed further. But the collaborative between that, going students' mobility, if we're talking about editability and mobility, it would be nice for students in Euro to see the problem in Southeast Asia, and for the student in South Asia to see the managerial point of view in Euro as well, the technology, and hopefully both will benefit somehow.
In EURASTiP Malaysia in Penang, they do have that. However, the issue that occurs is if you want to do the credit transfer, if student going abroad in Europe country, it becomes difficult because the bench fee is like 5 times higher than Asia. For the people to come in, it's fine. Like so, if the student did already enrolled in Malaysia, for instance, they're paying certain amount of money, but in order for them to go to, let's say, Norway, which the bench fee is very high, so it's not practical. But for Norwegian to come into Malaysia, it's fine because it's lower.
Not
So
only bench fee but living costs.
living costs and
Very
everything. So
expensive.
I guess it comes to that.
So we can train people
Yeah.
by coming to Asia, but practically it's impossible for
Well,
Asia
yeah. Yeah.
people to be trained in
Yeah.
Europe, because indeed the costs are too high.
Too high. And the thing that probably that European that should probably, or I shouldn't say word should, or need to
Remember the microphone.
Yes, because the student in Asian country are struggling to get funding for education. Like they have to pay already high fee for in general, and especially when we already have like research university, non-research university. So the different huge gap or huge differences in the fees that they're paying. So if once they get in, where else they already get certain amount of loan, education loan. But if they have to go for the credit transfer, they probably need to get extra loan on top of that loan. So I mean, it's extra burden for the student. If they come from the very wealthy family, it's fine. But if they are like where we call common student, regular student have like limited funding and things like that. That can be challenging for Asian to go to Europe. But for Europe to come here, it's fine. But what we can offer is maybe not, catering what the industry in Europe already established, as we say,
Do your Asian institutions see European students as a target market? Do you want to attract more European students into your institutions? Is there any policies in place to try to do that?
I guess in Thailand, yes, because Thailand is already established, like EIT, and but in other sector, not aquaculture, yes, like a European are coming into Malaysia for other sector. Aquaculture can be challenging. Vietnam might be one of the best place to go because of the industrial setting is very advanced. Bangladesh could be it, but like I said, like Indonesia, Malaysia can be a bit challenging. Indonesia might, yes, but Malaysia, as I said, unless if you're looking into certain industries that specific, like probably like tuna fisheries is probably one of them because it's already like international level. Apart from that, I say like Malaysia producing, but not that high par that make it visible to the international level. We are producing, but not that outstanding like groups. Indonesia very specialized and very one of the bigger producers for the groupers. Malaysia producing it, but more on exporting to the most is Thailand or China, and our contribution to the share of the groupers export is not that big. So in that sense, we still, for me, I can speak from my knowledge that it's still limited what we can offer. What we are trying to do, at least at the University of Science Malaysia, we try to produce what we call a different angle. It's not like typical knowledge. What we're catering is what we call design knowledge. What's the industry need, we design toward that. So but still open for discussion.
We are having one French student coming to take the master program in Ghent University this year. Because actually he went there to do the internships for 3 months, and then when he come back, he went back to France and he wrote to me and said, I'm willing to do the master course over there because I like to have knowledge and experience with the aquaculture in
and the cost is
Belgium.
not higher for a student from outside.
No, not
So not like in Europe when you're from outside
cheap.
Europe, it's more expensive.
No, only $1,800 US dollar per year. Very cheap.
I don't know, just a
And the
different.
living cost is very low.
If that's the case, why don't we bring? If there's corporations, why don't we bring John, for example, to UMT and teach for 3 weeks?
Again, I have to say that we have to pay.
Rather than we send 10 students from Malaysia to go to Europe for 3 weeks. Why don't we? The collaboration is about changing the expertise. Is that possible?
No, we
No, it's
should bring
different.
our students to you.
It's different.
That
It's
would be
much
revolutionary.
different.
Because student, the one that need the experience, not the lecturer, not the researcher. So
So it's
So what would be revolutionary is that you train
Train the
partly
students,
our
partly.
students instead of us training yours.
We are working with Ghent University right now to offer a double degree. So we haven't worked out the details yet, but I think it is something that is doable. Of course, if you look into Thailand or Vietnam, of course they are flourishing in their own way. But I don't see there's limitations, challenge certainly, but it's doable. It's doable to find a collaborative process in between.
Maybe at least we have 2 or 3 master students now going to India for doing their master thesis there. But of course that's through a research project, so then it's maybe easier.
Research would be easier certainly. It's not very costly.
This is very easy. Like Ghent, we have been doing with Ghent several years. So they send students
Students and
to do
back
thesis
in
in
Malaysia
our
as well.
university.
Yeah.
And this year we will send one to Ghent for doing the thesis. So thesis exchange is much easier than
Yes.
courses.
At School of Biological Sciences, we have sort of like summer program with Skill University, where they send a group of students coming over, where we teach them tropical sciences like biology and as well as aquaculture, where I get involved in. But previously we already have research exchange because, as you said, it's easier to be done. And now we are getting a step further with bringing undergraduate students. And just in June, we already have received 8 students, and next year we are looking about 20 students coming in, because we need to sort of like get the system mature as well to see what we can cater the system back in Kiel, and we also need to see the syllabus Kiel and USM, whether it is at same par or not, because what the issue that we should also address, like in case like one of the university already at this high and one university at this level, so if the higher want to send a student to the lower, it's not like coming to the level, so it has to be like both of the what we call curriculum must be at same par, so that the exchange come to the same level. So that's my thought.
Well, what I think is that this topic is pretty much close to, and it's related to mobility. In fact, let's say maybe 20 years ago, the Erasmus program in Europe was not that big, or for sure it was much smaller than it is nowadays. So it has been growing. And now we are talking about mobility between Europe and Asia. Probably no one was talking about that 20 years ago. And maybe in 10 years or in 20 years there will be much more mobility than the one that exists now. Is it important? Absolutely, absolutely important. I received more than one time Asian students, and we were visiting fish farms, and I was amazed about how much interested they were about species that they'd never seen, about looking at sea bream, sea bass. They heard so much about it. They know how important it is, those species, and for sure that one European going to Asia and seeing new species, they will learn for sure. Even we could say, but you don't have those species in your country. Why should you go there? For sure, they will learn. One example: there's no big differences. Well, when we talk about methods and systems in aquaculture, they are the same in Europe as in Asia. Extensive, semi-intensive, intensive. But once we see and we learn about new species, we can apply that to some species that we want to produce,
the
and we still
technology and the
cannot.
concept behind it.
Yeah.
So we don't have an important production in Europe on shrimps, but you have. But we would like to have also. And we have already, like we were talking before about freshwater shrimps. No one was producing freshwater shrimps 10 years ago. Nowadays, I have freshwater shrimps inside and outside my apartment.
Other than the zebrafish.
The what, sorry? I don't eat them. But, and I wish we could produce important shrimp species that exist in Portugal. And I believe that one day we will learn how to produce those species. And it will be facilitated by knowledge and by learning in Asia. So in other words, I think collaboration is fundamental. There's not much money for this mobility. Maybe it's easier to do mobility between educators because there's not so many as students, so it's easier that 10 educators travel than 100 students travel. Maybe a few students selected could travel, if they cannot all travel for 6 months or 1 year, maybe we can reduce that for, I'm going to exaggerate a bit, but 1 month or 1 week, and like that many more could travel.
But could we do like more digital collaboration platforms?
I was about to say the same
Also.
thing. There's one thing. Sorry,
Because now we have the opportunity to do that, I think.
If I can share one example, this this beyond mobility. Say we don't have money to move around. Let's stay in our place. But what can we do to collaborate? There's one thing. There was one paper I read that this is not on aquaculture, but it's an engineering school. It's between the one in US and the UK. Both of the students, engineering students, they do this project called project-oriented problem-based learning. So this group of students in UK and this group of students in US do the same experiment. If I'm not mistaken, on transmitting wave, something, things like that, and they compare the results. So that actually can be part of the collaborations as well. It's not necessarily you have to go there and to learn it, but the same project at a different setup and the sharing.
You evaluate to see if you come to the
Same
solution.
conclusions at different place and case study. So the two lecturers of this same subject, so nutrition here and nutrition there, they come up with the same set of problems, do it at different places, and then you can compare that. Is I think one type of collaborations that can be done as well.
And also, like in previous EURASTiP meeting, and also been practiced, I practiced that as well. On the internet, you can find that we call open depository on the internet, that you can deposit like your slide presentation videos from different part of the world, and people can get it for free.
The online
If you
platform,
remember.
right?
The online platform.
Sorry.
Sorry. I mean, like from there, like you can get anywhere, like as you said, culture system from Europe, culture system from China, or whatsoever. The only limiting factor that we find in that is that the practical part of it, because watching video or reading through online isn't the same when you handle the fish. For instance, if you handle salmon, it's different than you handle African catfish.
Of course, this is a supplement. I think, as we do with our students that are in internships, now we're trying to. They design a problem in their factory, and they film a problem, and we make groups of 4 or 5 students together, and they see each other's films. And we collect them in a meeting, online meeting, where they are discussing and try to solve each other's problems.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and it could be they are all in the same study program, but they are in internships across the country. But it could be a student in Asia and one in France, one in Norway, and
I mean, that's true that online is better than nothing. And online can be for free. So collaboration could be online and not much money would be involved. But it's interesting that this morning someone showed a result of a study and students were almost not interested on online courses.
Self study, right?
Yes.
it was lecturers.
Yes. Yes.
That's
So
what
they
they-
were absolutely not interested. And sorry,
No,
just
no,
It
no.
wasn't the students.
No, it was not the students. It was the lecturers were asked, "Do you think this is an effective learning method?" And they said no. But if you have asked the students, maybe they will say something.
okay.
The teacher doesn't want to go into the interactive and innovative teaching because they find it very,
Because you have to prep beforehand. You have to get ready. Once you get ready, it's easy.
But you have
to
to-
go before that, prepping before
You
that.
have to understand we are from different generations. Some of them are before that and now, so you have to put yourself in the different situation, different people. Some people may not be very familiar with PowerPoint, some are very advanced. So, because of that, that's the reason why they choose not not to have online teaching.
What you've seen a bit in our country is, because I've been in the period where we would have a simple a book, a lecture, and that's it. Then we moved into videos, small movies, so the demand became very high. But typically as a university, you're about 5 years behind the student. So by the time we had the videos, the students, who cares about the videos? We look at them all day, just give me a lecture.
Yeah.
So it's kind of difficult to keep up with these things because they go so fast.
Yes.
So maybe in a way we shouldn't even try.
I disagree with that.
Some years
Because you'll
ago,
be
I was
always.
some years ago I was a student. I applied for an online course of fish diseases, and it was also a way to see if we could, or if I could, or if we could develop something similar. Honestly, my experience was not the best. I was not so much enthusiastic about those online courses for several reasons.
We don't
but
have phone at that time, the smartphones.
no, but well, for several reasons, it's completely different from reality.
Really? I find it like online courses is actually one of the platforms. Like if you jump on Coursera online, educator from different part of the world like sharing knowledge. Like you can learn it for free. Unless if you want the certificate, you have to pay for a certain amount of money. Part of it, like you just learn it for free, and you can sit for the exam. You can see the video. You can stop, rewind, and then move forward and things like that. But I guess it comes to the person itself, the student, whether they want to study or not. Like
That's the final bit, but you are right. The new generation does work with internet. So when I ask my PhD students, because he looks at videos, self-instructive videos to learn a program, I said, "What do you prefer, the video or the book?" He says the video.
Simply, you like traveling?
yeah.
Yes. So if you don't have money, you cannot go to France or go to Norway to do the sightseeing. But you can do on the screen, traveling around the world from TV. But you still prefer to go there. Yes. So it's simply that
But it's
mobility
like,
is also.
if we talk about a very good book with a lot of images, pictures.
Yeah.
No, that's you and me, but that's not a
generation
16-year-old.
But-
You're too old already, sorry.
But this morning we were talking about this generic, and we were, you lose this discussion part. So I think online training alone is not a good idea either. But you should also discuss what you are seeing with someone else.
Yeah, I think if we base on online learning, so might as well we all resign from our job. But I think the online digital tools is there to assist, to make it more engaging, to make it more interactive, and we should take advantage of that because now the generation is like that. We cannot change them. They are like that, So we have to cater to their needs, and I think it should assist. And our job is to make them learn.
What you shouldn't do is to put your course online and that's it. No, you keep the same amount of teaching, but you teach differently. You say, okay, you learn the book, whatever, online, how you do this, but you come back to us and we sit together in small groups and we discuss what you've seen. So you should adopt the teaching. You should not just translate it into.
So meaning that mobility exchange at one point probably
It's still necessary.
The online course I did, so there was some text, some pictures, some videos, but then every time someone wanted to put a question, it was on a sentence, and then it was a lot of sentences, and they could not answer all the questions. So it was not practical at all. So it's not the same as we are in a group. I just put my hands up. And
I
so
think that is the type of platform that you use. It depends on the platform. You can have few platforms. I'm not sure. It's called Padlets, or there's few things that you can have few channels. So it is similar to you have 5 groups of students. Rather than if you have 5 groups of students in class, you are here, you are there, you are there, you are there. Not at the same time, but with online discussion, 5 groups in front of you, 5 students each, you can answer, you can see all of the questions.
if you are doing an online course, is probably we have students from different countries, and you have probably not 5, probably you have 20, 40, 50.
Alright.
So it's not easy to create a discussion like the one we are doing here. And I can understand by your faces if you understand what I'm saying. Online it wouldn't be
That's a
so
limitation.
easy.
There's no like personal touch to it. Certainly with online, but that's why I say it can be used to assist, not 100% rely on. If you 100% rely on,
But in a way, it's not different because the moment we teach to 40, even though it's real life, we also don't have interaction. So it stops with 8 or something. Then we can still see each other's faces and we can interact. So the moment we put 40 persons in the room, it becomes impersonal. So the moment we would make online and we restrict to 8, we probably have the connection again. So it's I think it is the future, but we still have to learn to deal with it. But it is reality.
Do you think there's an appetite within academics to cooperate on developing these kind of online resources between institutions? One of the examples that firstly is the appetite for the academics. Have they got the enthusiasm? Have they got the will to do that? Are they restricted from doing that by their own institutions, policies, etc., or by other factors that stop them from doing that?
For me, it's not only the restriction by the university, but it's actually the expert to do it. Okay, alright. If you're talking about online and you're talking about sharing videos and notes between the university on the internet, that is very simple. Let's move beyond that. Let's move beyond making a simulations for students from different countries, or like an online game on an app. We can actually, I think there's an app where you farmer something where you rear.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, something like that. But with
You
fish,
keep your fish alive.
a fish alive online. And when you play Wii with your tennis, let's do that by feeding the fish, or because we have game where we can catch fish. Roll it up, catch fish. Things like that. Like, if we go beyond that, it doesn't stop at we have the knowledge. I know that if catfish eat 30% of protein compared to 40%, what happened? But how we take that knowledge to game base, and for that it's not only the academics. We need the engineers, we need software people, and you have to go beyond that if you are moving towards digital learning. Because engineering students have done it. People who learn how to pilot have done it. Why not we start taking a step to go towards it?
I have to say that it's already been done in Australia. One part of the aquaculture sector is actually on the digestibility that conventionally we have to feed the fish to collect the feces to get the collected. So in Australia, it's actually Giovanni's Tuccini group. One student, probably he's already graduated, already developed a system where you don't have to feed the fish. It's actually a system that you adjusted all the pH, things like that, according to the physiology of the fish. With that feed, it will tell you the digestibility. It will take longer time to do that because for that type of things, you need data input.
True.
Then only you can
Modeling before. True. That's what I said.
Because environment is very complicated because the moment things change, we are not having like 1 or 2 factor. We have the thousands of factor will affect and everything. So we are probably heading towards that. Industry probably already there because they won't tell us what they already, things like that. But are we ready to go that far? Because it's required money,
I think
investment.
if we looking at ready, it's never a time to be ready. If we start small, like first collaborations of the data, I input your data, you input my data, and then maybe the next time is, it may take 20 years from now, but it's something to be think about.
Objective 4 point. 4.0.
Are we missing things then from industry in that we're not looking to industry to feed in some of this stuff? Because I know that, for instance, say with virtual reality, some of the supply companies now are doing quite sophisticated things in simulating fish farm environments with virtual reality, but we're not then getting that. Well, we're not anyway.
No, we're not getting that to the academics yet. Because
it's not coming into the teaching because they're seeing this as a marketing tool. They're not seeing this as an educational tool.
Yeah, because I'm not mistaken, in China, there's this one university, I don't remember the name. They use the same applications as when you go fishing, you have the sonar technology, you see where the fish is. So the same applications they use in shrimp farming to see where the aggregations of the fish are of the shrimp, where is it, and it's make the feeding more efficient. Or you can see, then the environmental aspect and things like that. So yes, other than if you're answering your first question just now, is it restricted? If we just university, maybe we cannot do much. We still confined to the digital sharing. But if we can have more people work together, pitch our ideas, so perhaps we could do more. Yeah.
In terms of just sort of concrete proposals to go forward, if you were sort of advising the EU now out of the EURASTiP project, a recommendation from the EURASTiP project, how they should be spending their money to promote better collaboration between Europe and Asia in order to supply better graduates and things for industry. How would you spend the money? How would you recommend they spend their money?
I would suggest something that European could invest in actually on IT and modeling to come up with something like what we call like aquaculture modeling or things like that, with apps or things like, because Asian countries are quite good with computer science, IT and things like that, and European has data, big data, meaning that like Norwegian, like salmon production, rainbow trout, and probably different part like Pangasius, the big data, not a small scale. Probably small scale can have some data, but for the big company, they don't have that data. They record everything. So probably that kind of investment that we'll look into, like we bring aquaculture into different level, not just feeding the fish or that's what I thought. Like I don't know.
I think that the investment should be on mobility, maybe a platform at the same time, but people mobility would be the fundamental, most important thing. As I said before, either just the educators and students would be perfect also. Maybe a platform, more than that.
That would be fantastic, isn't it?
Sorry?
That would be fantastic, isn't it?
I know, but it's happening already. 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I think everybody would say no, it's impossible. And now we are talking about that.
Yeah.
It's like Erasmus. It was, I think,
But
in
how
my
big is
time,
the mobility right now? I think there's a lot of Asian students in
Coming.
my city at least.
there's a lot of them
Maybe
coming.
also
Oh
in-
yes,
yeah.
to Europe.
Yeah.
But I
And-
think that's more on research,
and-
not undergraduate.
It's usually it's 2 years master.
Master.
Yeah, postgraduate. Yeah.
And also PhD students, of
And-
course,
Yeah.
but a lot of master students.
And it's also important if the Asians, the Asian students that come to Europe to study, if they didn't like, very soon, the others wouldn't come because they would tell the others, oh, don't do it. You are going to lose time, you are going to lose money, don't go. And it's not what's happening.
I think it will happen in Germany. Mobility will be easier. Like when in 2005 when I graduated, if I want to do industrial attachment, I have to just to go to neighboring state. That's the most that I can afford. But right now my students are going to Japan, going to Vietnam in yearly basis, annual basis. Every year they go to Canter and Nong Lam to do their industrial training. And who knows, maybe a few years ago they'll go and meet you and OU. I think it's there. It's going to be easier in the future because it's going to be something normal compared to past few years. Yeah.
And what is more expensive, at least, is to travel, to fly.
because my student, the one that go to Japan, they are willing to pay for their own flight ticket if the university provide with accommodations. Because
There
flight
are
ticket you can
certain
find
things must be like partly
the cheapest one at different rate. You can jump, but jump
To
in
Japan is just halfway here, so
but if you the accommodation you have to stay for long. So if the university can provide with the hostel,
Yeah.
also they can pool the money for just the ticket. Like in collaborations, agreements between two universities. What can you give and what can you not give?
Now a question that I ask you: when you did your PhD in Australia, it changed you, didn't it?
It does. The experience changed me.
For
Sure.
better.
The thing is, I did my PhD in Australia and I just finished my degree. I did not do my master. I directly do my PhD there, and it's such a eye-opening, scary experience that, thank God I finished. But yeah, it is something. Learning at something at new place is something. It builds character in a way.
So let's see what John is writing. Just going to
See, John did not take any notes.
Yes,
And now he putting up there.
Overcoming academic barrier needs to attract more European students to Asia. Online teach needs to
Online and technology.
online technology needs to move behind online barriers. Industry can contribute to
Virtual reality,
reality modeling data.
gamification.
Collaboration
Gamification.
So gamification is just
the words,
That's the word.
another word,
It's a
What have I missed? Anything we've talked about?
I give example for the project-oriented problem-based learning just now, where you can do different project in different country and then compare the result. That can be done collaboration.
Another one thing that we did on that was interesting but quite difficult to organise was we actually had a class of business students and a class of aquaculture students. And we said, we got them to collaborate, it was a small group, we got them to collaborate together on developing a business plan for aquaculture, so the aquaculture students could learn from the business students how to put together a business plan, and the business people could understand the aquaculture industry a bit better. But it's difficult to kind of get
To be in the same page,
groups
two
that
groups.
are interested in doing that at the same time.
I see.
So me,
So your original one was collaborating in problem-based learning. That can be online or?
Yeah, can be online, can be offline or online. You cannot share your results.
I think what you've also maybe missed, or we didn't really discuss, but it was on the table, that Asia is, you can't say Asia. Malaysia is completely different from Vietnam, it's completely different from the others.
You cannot generalize.
You can't generalize. Maybe even more for Asia than for Europe. I think you can generalize Europe more than you can Asia.
Yes, true.
The focus, the status of the industry itself is
so
very
different.
diverse.
And apart from that, I think language can be one of the things because when I received a student from Thailand, the English communication is a bit tough for them. So they come to Malaysia because English is our second language, and we deliver our lecture in English, and most of the communication also in English. So, but I think European to go for certain different part of the country, I mean, like that's probably things that you need to consider.
So did we solve all the problems?
I think this is one question that we really stick into the questions, but we don't divert that much.
Yeah, it's that word courses that's really difficult, but we've got a lot of ideas as to ways in which we can collaborate. And there was a lot of, I'll present it later.
To know how you deal with the small farm